The mysterious return. For thousands of years, Earth had been left in silence. The stars were once teeming with alien fleets and ships from across the galaxy, but then they all vanished. The aliens who once visited Earth, explored its secrets, and studied its people disappeared. No one knew why, but Earth was left alone. No signals, no visitors, no ships, just silence. But that silence was broken one fateful day. It started with a ripple in the fabric of space itself, a strange disturbance, a shift that no one could explain. At first it was so small that no one noticed. Then, as it grew, so did the strange signals, reaching the far corners of the galaxy, including Earth. The signals were unmistakable. A fleet was coming. But this was not just any fleet. It was the return of the aliens who had once visited Earth, and they were coming back, not with an army, not with multiple ships, but with just one. One massive, ancient ship. The world's greatest minds scrambled to decode the signals. What did this mean? Why had they returned after all these years? The governments of Earth were thrown into chaos, trying to figure out what to do. No one expected this. After millennia of silence, they had returned. But why just one ship? Was it a message or a warning? As the ship approached, its massive form slowly filled the sky. It was unlike any ship humanity had ever seen. Its shape was strange, its surface a mix of metal and what appeared to be organic material, pulsing faintly as it moved through space. There were no weapons visible on the ship, no sign of aggression, but its size alone was enough to make the people of Earth nervous. This wasn't just a ship, it was a message, and everyone knew it. The humans on Earth watched in awe and fear. The ship was slowly approaching Earth's orbit, its engines glowing as it decelerated. The whole world was watching, eyes glued to screens, waiting to see what would happen next. But even as the ship drew closer, no one knew its purpose. There was no communication, no indication of what the aliens wanted. The ship just moved silently through space, closer and closer to Earth. The governments of Earth scrambled to respond. Military forces were placed on high alert. Ships and satellites were positioned around the globe, ready for any kind of response. But what could they do? They had no idea what this ship was or what it wanted. All they could do was wait and watch as it entered their skies. For days, the massive ship hovered above the Earth, giving no signs of movement other than its slow descent into the atmosphere. People whispered about the aliens. Were they returning for revenge? Or were they here to help humanity? But the questions were endless, and no one had any answers. The ship seemed peaceful, but no one knew for sure. Then, as the days passed, something even stranger happened. The ship didn't land. It didn't make any attempt to enter Earth's atmosphere as everyone had expected. Instead, it simply stayed there, stationary, hanging in the sky as if waiting for something. No one could explain it. It was almost as if it were observing Earth, watching humanity. The world's leaders called for an emergency summit, hoping to figure out what to do. Should they attempt to communicate with the alien visitors? Should they send representatives to meet them? The mystery deepened with each passing hour. The ship had come, but it wasn't moving, and it wasn't communicating. What did it want? In a moment of desperation, the humans tried to send a signal to the ship. A small team of scientists worked tirelessly to create a message. They sent it out into space, hoping that somehow the ship would receive it. And then something incredible happened. A reply came, but it was not what they expected. The message was simple, almost cryptic. We are not here to conquer. We are here to witness. The words echoed through every broadcast system on Earth, sending a shiver down the spines of everyone who heard it. What did it mean? What was there to witness? And why had the aliens chosen this moment to return after so long? The mystery deepened, and humanity was left with more questions than answers. As the ship remained hovering above the Earth, the world's best minds gathered to discuss what had just happened. What did the message mean? Why would the aliens return after so long? And why with just one ship? The answers were still unclear, but one thing was certain. Something big was coming, and humanity was about to learn what it meant to be watched by those who once ruled the stars. With the eyes of the world on the sky, the people of Earth held their breath, waiting for the next move. What would the aliens do next? Why had they returned? And more importantly, what did they mean by witness? Only time would tell, but one thing was for sure. This was just the beginning. The days following the arrival of the mysterious alien ship were filled with uncertainty and fear. Earth's governments worked around the clock to study the ship, trying to understand its origins and purpose. Scientists, engineers, and military experts from around the globe were brought together to work on what had become humanity's greatest challenge. The ship, massive, silent, and mysterious, hovered high above Earth, its intentions still unclear. For the first few days, no one could approach it. The alien ship emitted a strange energy field that made it impossible for any human spacecraft to get close. Every attempt to send a probe or satellite towards it was met with failure. The energy from the ship seemed to push back against any technology that came too near. Even the most advanced military crafts were no match for it. The ship was untouchable, an enigma in the sky that no one could unravel. Yet, as Earth's finest minds worked tirelessly, they started to notice something peculiar. The longer the ship stayed above them, the more Earth's atmosphere began to change. It was subtle at first, a slight shift in the air pressure, a strange energy pulsing in the atmosphere, but it was enough to make people nervous. Some experts theorized that the ship was affecting Earth's weather patterns, causing strange storms and anomalies in the electromagnetic field. Others believed the ship had a purpose beyond merely observing. Whatever the reason, humanity had no way of understanding the full scope of what was happening. While the governments of Earth debated how to approach the situation, there was one common thought on everyone's mind: the alien message. The cryptic message that had come through Earth's communication systems had left everyone in suspense. We are not here to conquer. We are here to witness. What did the aliens mean by witness? The world had no answers. Were they observing humanity for scientific purposes, or was there something deeper at play? Was Earth being judged, or were the aliens merely watching history unfold? The questions plagued every conversation, and speculation ran wild. In the midst of all this confusion, a group of young scientists discovered something strange. After months of data collection, they found a pattern in the energy field emitted by the ship. It was unlike anything they had ever seen. It was not just some random anomaly or random interference. It was a highly sophisticated signal. And they believed it was an invitation, or at least a hint at what was to come. Desperately trying to make sense of it, they enhanced their communication equipment and sent out a response to the ship. This time, they asked a simple question: "What do you want from us?" The response came much faster than they expected, almost as if the ship had been waiting for this very question. The message was short, direct, and again, filled with mystery. "You are not yet ready." Humanity was left stunned. The aliens had communicated again, but this response only deepened the confusion. What did it mean? Why had they returned only to tell humanity it wasn't ready? Ready for what? For thousands of years, Earth had lived in isolation, unchallenged and untouched by alien hands. They had built their civilizations, explored their world, and expanded into the stars. But what were the aliens referring to? Was there something about Earth that made humanity unworthy, unprepared? This cryptic response led to new theories. Some believe the aliens had returned to check on humanity's progress. Maybe they were watching to see if Earth was ready to join the galactic community, a member of the interstellar nations that rule the stars. Others thought it was a test to see how humanity would react to such a profound and mysterious event. As humanity struggled to understand, the ship remained silent, its towering form in the sky unyielding. Scientists worked day and night to decode the energy patterns and signals that seemed to come from the ship. But as time passed, the crew began to notice something unsettling. There were strange figures appearing within the ship, figures that seemed to move in and out of view, and occasionally, lights would flicker inside its massive structure. Were these the aliens themselves? Were they preparing to come down to Earth? The world was captivated by the alien ship, but not everyone shared the same sense of awe and wonder. As the days turned into weeks, some began to question the aliens' true intentions. Why hadn't they made any effort to communicate directly with Earth's leaders? Why had they waited so long? There was a growing sense of unease, even fear, among the public. What if the aliens were not here to help? What if they had come to judge humanity, or worse, to make a decision that would change everything? A few brave souls on Earth began to take action. A coalition of military leaders, scientists, and diplomats decided that it was time to act. They planned to send a single representative team aboard a ship to approach the alien vessel directly. Their mission: to ask the aliens what they truly wanted and to see if they could break the silence that had lasted for thousands of years. The plan was dangerous. No one knew if the alien ship would allow them to get close. And even if they did, no one knew how the aliens would react to such a bold move. But the time for waiting was over. Humanity had to know what the aliens were up to, and they had to know fast. With the ship still hovering above Earth and the rest of the world watching, the time for a decision had come. Would humanity uncover the truth behind the alien ship, or was there a darker mystery at play, waiting to be revealed? Ace. The days passed. Earth's leaders and the scientific community had all but agreed on one thing: the time to act had come. The alien ship had been hovering above Earth for far too long without offering any clear answers. No longer could humanity sit idly by and wait for the mysterious visitors to reveal their intentions. Someone had to approach them. And it would be humanity's finest. A special team was assembled, chosen for their expertise and bravery. It wasn't going to be easy. The ship had an impenetrable energy field that had resisted all attempts to approach. However, the team, made up of top scientists, diplomats, and military personnel, were determined to make contact. They believed that if they could get close enough to the alien ship, they might find the answers humanity desperately sought. The mission was a calculated risk. The team would board the Aurora, humanity's most advanced spacecraft, and use its experimental technology to navigate through the ship's protective energy field. The ship was designed to withstand extreme environments, but no one knew if it would be enough to breach the alien defenses. As the Aurora prepared for its launch, the world watched with bated breath. Cameras across the planet streamed the event live, broadcasting it to billions of people. The atmosphere was electric, filled with both hope and fear. People from every corner of the Earth, young and old, tuned in. For some, it felt like the beginning of a new chapter in human history. For others, it was a terrifying moment, unsure of what would happen next. The Aurora's engines roared to life, and the ship slowly lifted off from Earth's surface. The tension in the control room was palpable as the spacecraft ascended into the sky, heading toward the massive alien vessel. Outside, the ship's energy field shimmered like a wall of light, and the closer they got, the stronger the magnetic pull felt. Captain Elijah Wright, the leader of the mission, sat at the helm, his grip tight on the controls. Beside him, Dr. Karen Hines, the mission's chief scientist, monitored the ship's energy systems, her fingers flying over the console as she ensured everything was running smoothly. At the back of the craft, the military crew made final checks on their weapons systems, just in case. "We're getting close," Captain Wright muttered, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "Prepare yourselves for anything." On the screens in front of them, the alien ship loomed larger. It was a colossal structure, dark and imposing, with intricate designs etched into its surface. The ship seemed almost alive, as if it had its own consciousness, watching the Aurora's every move. As they reached the edge of the energy field, the crew felt the ship shift. It was as if the Aurora was being drawn in, the field around them pulling them closer to the alien vessel. Dr. Hines' voice crackled over the intercom. "We've entered the energy field," she said, her voice calm but filled with a hint of awe. "Keep your systems steady. We don't know how it will react." The Aurora began to shake as the energy field's influence intensified. Lights flickered inside the ship, and the crew braced themselves for what would happen next. For a brief moment, the ship's instruments seemed to go haywire, and the crew struggled to keep their systems online. But Captain Wright's steady hands kept the ship on course. "Hang on," he said, pushing the ship forward despite the interference. "We're going in." Suddenly, as if the ship had been waiting for them, the energy field began to stabilize. The shaking subsided, and the instruments returned to normal. The Aurora had passed through the field, but what lay ahead was even more daunting. The alien ship's surface was unlike anything they had seen before. The metal was dark and smooth, like obsidian, with an otherworldly sheen. There were no windows, no visible ports, no signs of life. It looked more like an ancient relic than a modern spaceship. It was as if the ship had been abandoned for millennia, left to drift through space on its own. Captain Wright and Dr. Hines exchanged a look. They had made it this far, but they had no idea what they would find inside. "We've arrived," Dr. Hines said softly, almost to herself. Captain Wright nodded, his heart racing. They were now close enough to see the details of the ship's exterior. Strange symbols and markings covered its surface, some of them familiar to human scientists, others entirely foreign. What did they mean? Who had made them? And why had this ship returned after so many years? "Prepare for docking," Wright ordered. "We're going to board." The crew's hearts raced. The docking procedure was delicate. They had no idea what they would encounter once they stepped foot on the alien ship. Was it still occupied? Or was it a relic from an ancient civilization? If there were inhabitants, would they be hostile? As the Aurora slowly approached the docking bay, they could see a door open in the side of the alien ship. It was not the traditional airlock they had expected. Instead, the opening was a vast, circular gap, revealing the interior of the ship. The inside was dark and still, and no signs of life were visible. The Aurora slowly slid into the docking area, the ship's hull making a soft thud as it made contact with the alien vessel. The crew readied themselves, grabbing their gear and weapons just in case. They couldn't afford to be unprepared. "Here we go," Captain Wright said. His voice was steady, but the gravity of the moment was heavy in the air. The doors of the Aurora opened, and the team stepped into the unknown. The air was cold and sterile. There was no sound, no movement, just a vast emptiness that stretched before them. The ship's interior was cavernous, its walls adorned with strange, glowing symbols. The atmosphere was thick with tension. Were they the first humans to set foot on this alien ship in thousands of years? As the crew moved deeper into the vessel, they realized something unsettling. It was entirely silent. No alien inhabitants, no crew, no signs of life at all. But what they would soon discover would change everything. The alien ship was not as empty as it seemed. The crew of the Aurora moved cautiously through the cold, silent halls of the alien ship. Their footsteps echoed softly on the metallic floor, each sound amplifying the eerie quiet that surrounded them. The ship was enormous, far larger than anything they had ever seen before. Its interior was vast, with long corridors leading off into the darkness, some lined with strange, glowing symbols, others seemingly leading to nowhere. Captain Wright, leading the team, felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. This was no ordinary discovery. Humanity had just stepped into the heart of an alien mystery that had been drifting through space for millennia. What had happened to the crew? Where were the inhabitants of the ship? And most importantly, why had it returned to Earth after all this time? Dr. Hines, walking beside Wright, studied the walls intently. "These markings," she murmured, pointing at the glowing symbols. "They're not just decoration. They seem to be some sort of language, but unlike anything we've seen, could be an advanced form of communication." The rest of the team took note, but their attention was split. The silence was unsettling. No alien sounds, no hum of machinery, nothing. It was as if the ship had been abandoned. Yet the presence of the symbols, the ship's immaculate condition, suggested that someone had been here recently. But who? "Captain, we need to be careful," Lieutenant Carter, the team's security officer, said quietly, his hand hovering near the weapon at his side. "This ship could be dangerous. There's something off about it." Wright nodded grimly. "Stay alert, everyone. If something feels wrong, we back out immediately." The team moved deeper into the ship, their senses heightened. Each new passageway they entered seemed more unsettling than the last. The walls were smooth, almost alive in the way they shimmered with the soft glow of the symbols. But it was more than that. As they ventured further, the air itself seemed to grow thicker, colder. The sense of unease began to gnaw at them, like something was watching, lurking in the shadows. They finally came to a massive round chamber. The room was so large that its far end was swallowed by the darkness. In the center of the room, suspended by what seemed like an invisible force, was a strange, pulsing object, shaped like a large sphere, but covered in metallic tendrils that seemed to writhe and move on their own. The sphere glowed faintly, its surface rippling like water. "What is that?" Dr. Hines whispered, her eyes wide with astonishment. "I don't know," Wright said, his voice barely above a whisper. He approached cautiously, each step measured. The rest of the team followed, drawn to the object as if it held some kind of magnetic pull. The closer they got, the stronger the sense of unease became. The air around the object felt wrong, heavy, pressing down on them. Suddenly, a strange sound broke the silence. A low hum, almost imperceptible at first, but then growing louder, resonating deep within their bones. The sphere seemed to react, its tendrils twitching in a rhythmic pattern, as if responding to the hum. "Everyone, step back," Lieutenant Carter ordered, his voice firm. "This doesn't feel right." But it was too late. The hum intensified, and without warning, the sphere began to shift, its tendrils unfurling like the claws of some ancient beast. The ship seemed to come to life around them. The walls began to pulse with light, and the very air seemed to vibrate with an eerie energy. "We need to get out of here. Now," Wright barked. But just as the team turned to leave, the entire chamber shook violently. The hum became deafening, drowning out all other sound. The floor beneath their feet rumbled, as if the ship itself was awakening from a long slumber. And then, with a loud mechanical hiss, the ship's walls closed in around them, trapping the team in the chamber. The team's emergency alarms blared, but their efforts to escape were futile. The walls had sealed shut with an unyielding force. "What's happening?" Dr. Hines gasped, her voice full of panic. She pounded on the nearest wall, but it wouldn't budge. Wright turned to Carter. "Get your team in position. We may have to fight our way out." Lieutenant Carter immediately took charge, organizing the team into defensive positions, but they all knew they were at a disadvantage. They were trapped in an alien ship that was far beyond anything humanity had ever encountered. The ship was alive, and it was reacting to their presence in ways that defied logic. As the seconds ticked by, The pulse of the sphere grew louder, more rhythmic. It was as if the ship was breathing, alive in ways they couldn't understand. "I think it's trying to communicate with us," Dr. Hines said, her voice trembling with both awe and fear, "but in a way we can't comprehend. The technology here, it's older than anything we've ever seen. And yet, it's so advanced." The lights flickered, and for a moment, the sphere's tendrils froze in place. The room fell into a heavy silence, and the crew exchanged uneasy glances. Was the ship reacting to them? Or was it something else entirely? Suddenly, without warning, the sphere emitted a burst of energy that sent a shockwave through the room. The team was knocked off their feet, crashing to the ground. For a moment, everything went dark. The alarms stopped blaring, and the chamber was plunged into an oppressive silence once again. When the crew slowly regained consciousness, they found themselves in a completely different part of the ship. The walls around them had changed, more angular now, more mechanical in design. The air was colder, and the eerie hum had stopped. In the distance, they could see something moving. A shape, massive and indistinct, standing in the shadows. "What is that?" Carter asked, his voice barely a whisper. Wright didn't answer. He knew they weren't alone anymore. Something else was in this ship with them. And it was waiting. The crew was shaken, both physically and mentally. The last few moments had been a blur of chaos, with the room shaking violently, lights flickering, and a strange, unearthly hum echoing in their ears. Now, as they picked themselves up from the cold, metallic floor, they realized they were no longer in the same part of the ship. The walls were darker now, the corridors stretched farther, and the air felt colder, more sterile. "What just happened?" Lieutenant Carter asked, his voice hoarse, his hand clutching the side of his head. His helmet had cracked slightly in the fall, but the shock of what they had just experienced was more disorienting than any injury. Captain Wright's gaze remained fixed ahead. "I don't know, but we need to keep moving. Stay close and stay alert." Dr. Hines was already scanning the surroundings with her portable device. Her fingers trembled slightly, but she forced herself to focus. The ship's internal systems, they're still active. And it's not just the ship's pulse I'm detecting. She paused, turning to Wright. "I think the ship is alive, Captain. This thing, it's reacting to us." "Alive?" Carter's voice dropped to a whisper, his eyes scanning the shadows. "You mean it has a consciousness?" Hines hesitated, clearly uneasy. "I don't know, but everything about this ship screams of advanced, sentient technology. It's unlike anything we've ever encountered." They continued moving down the long, twisting corridors, which felt more like a labyrinth with every step. The walls were lined with strange alien symbols, and the air was filled with an almost imperceptible hum, vibrating at the edges of their perception. But this was not the same hum they had heard earlier. This one was softer, more haunting, like the ship was whispering to them. As they ventured deeper into the heart of the alien vessel, they came to a massive chamber. The room was enormous, far larger than any they had seen before. A great darkness seemed to hang over it, a thick mist that shrouded the farthest reaches of the room. In the center of the chamber stood a colossal structure, an intricate, pyramid-like shape that seemed to pulse with an energy of its own. At the base of the pyramid, large, metallic doors were open, revealing a glowing core at its center. The very sight of it made the air feel heavy, as if gravity itself was shifting. The core emitted a soft, otherworldly glow, casting strange shadows that danced across the room. "Is that the ship's heart?" Dr. Hines asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "It could be," Wright replied, his voice tight. "But I don't like the way it feels. It's like it's watching us." The team moved forward cautiously, the tension thick in the air. Every instinct screamed for them to turn back, but curiosity and duty kept them moving. As they approached the glowing core, the temperature seemed to drop even further, and the eerie hum grew louder. It was no longer just an ambient sound. It was as if the ship was calling to them, trying to communicate. Suddenly, the core pulsed with a blinding light, and for a split second, everything stopped. The humming ceased. The room was bathed in a pure, unnatural silence. The team froze, their hearts racing. And then it spoke. Not with words, but with a deep, resounding thrum that shook the very ground beneath their feet. It wasn't a sound they heard with their ears. It was something deeper, something that reverberated in their bones. A cold wave of dread washed over them. Captain Wright's hand instinctively went to his weapon, but he knew it would do little good against whatever this was. The ship, or whatever entity was controlling it, wasn't hostile in a way they could understand. It was beyond them, and it was awakening. Another pulse of light burst from the core, and this time, the room seemed to shift. The walls twisted, the very geometry of the space warping in ways that defied reason. The team stumbled backward, their minds struggling to comprehend what was happening. "Get out," Lieutenant Carter shouted. "We have to go now." But before they could retreat, the room began to change around them, the very air thickening and distorting. They were trapped. The exit was no longer visible, and the walls began to close in on them, as though the ship was alive and reacting to their presence. "Captain, what do we do?" Dr. Hines gasped, panic creeping into her voice. Wright's mind raced, but he couldn't think of a way out. "Keep moving. We need to find a way to disconnect whatever controls this, whatever's making the ship come alive." But as they turned to run, a voice echoed in their minds. It wasn't human, nor was it from the ship itself. It was something older, deeper, a whisper from the very heart of the ship. "You are trespassers," the voice rumbled in their minds. "Your kind is not meant to awaken us." The words cut through them like a blade, the weight of the ancient message almost unbearable. The ship wasn't just alive, it had been waiting for something, waiting for them. And now that it had found them, there would be no escape. The walls moved closer, and the hum of the ship grew louder, now more of a scream than a sound. Every step they took to escape seemed to be met with a deeper, colder force. It was as if the ship itself was closing in, trapping them in its heart. They were no longer in control, and the terror of the unknown had just begun. The crew had no time to process the strange and terrifying voice that echoed in their minds. The ship's walls constricted around them like an enormous beast preparing to devour its prey. Every corner of the room seemed to warp and bend, the strange hum of the ship growing louder, almost deafening. Captain Wright gripped his weapon, though deep down, he knew it wouldn't help. They were up against something far beyond their understanding. They were not simply intruding on an alien vessel. They had disturbed something ancient, something far more powerful than they had ever imagined. "Stay close," Wright ordered, trying to keep his voice steady as his mind raced. "We need to get out of here now." Lieutenant Carter was the first to react, dashing toward what appeared to be an exit. But as he moved, the walls seemed to shift, closing in on him. The corridors that once stretched out ahead now felt like they were narrowing, leading them further into the heart of the ship. The deeper they went, the more the oppressive air weighed them down, making it harder to breathe. "What is happening?" Carter shouted, his voice panicked as he backed away from the shifting walls. The others quickly followed suit, but the very layout of the ship seemed to be working against them. Every step forward felt like 2 steps backward. The ship wasn't just alive, it was moving, reacting, and anticipating their every move. Dr. Hines could hardly keep up. She was struggling to breathe, her heart pounding in her chest. She glanced at the strange symbols on the walls, which seemed to glow with an eerie light. "This ship is more than just technology," she said, her voice trembling. "It's alive in a way we can't understand. We're not dealing with machines. We're dealing with something ancient, something sentient." "Then how do we stop it?" Wright demanded, his eyes scanning the room for any possible way out. Dr. Hines' eyes widened with realization. "I think it's reacting to us, to our presence. The ship is communicating with us, but it's not in a language we can understand." She paused, then added, "This ship, I think it's been waiting for something, waiting for us." The implications of her words hung heavily in the air. The crew was beginning to understand. They had stumbled upon something they were never meant to find, something that had been dormant for thousands of years, only to awaken the moment humanity crossed its path. Suddenly, the humming grew louder, almost deafening. The crew froze, looking around in panic. The ship seemed to respond to their fear, its pulsating core growing brighter and brighter. Then the voice returned, this time, clearer and more intense. "You are the ones who awakened us," it boomed, the words reverberating in their minds. "Your kind is not ready for what lies ahead." Wright's breath caught in his throat. This was not just a warning, it was a threat. The ship, or whatever was controlling it, didn't want them here. It didn't want humanity to be a part of whatever had been set in motion so many years ago. "We didn't mean to disturb you," Wright said, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at him. "We didn't know. We're just explorers. We don't want any trouble." But the ship's voice only grew louder, more menacing. "It is too late for apologies. You have disturbed the peace of the ancients. Now you will face the consequences." The lights flickered, and the room seemed to shake again. The crew was thrown off balance, their bodies crashing against the floor as the ship's core pulsed with energy. The walls, now alive with movement, seemed to close in on them. The atmosphere was suffocating, and the temperature dropped dangerously low. It was as though the very air had turned hostile. "I don't know how much longer we can hold on," Dr. Hines gasped, her breath visible in the freezing air. "We need to find a way to shut this thing down." But the ship was not giving them any chance. The core glowed brighter, and the walls surged forward like an unstoppable force. The team barely had time to react as a blast of energy shot out from the heart of the ship, narrowly missing them. Wright's mind raced. He knew they were running out of time. The ship's hostility wasn't just physical, it was mental too. It had already made it clear that it wasn't going to let them leave peacefully. "We can't keep running," Wright said, his voice hoarse. "We need to find the source of this power and stop it, or we won't make it out of here alive." The team had no choice but to press forward. They continued to move through the ship, now fully aware of the growing sense of dread that was consuming them. The ship's reaction had gone from passive to violent, and it was clear that every step they took was bringing them closer to whatever the ship had been protecting for thousands of years. With each passing moment, the walls of the ship seemed to narrow further, and the air grew thicker, colder. The pulsating hum grew in volume, becoming a constant, oppressive presence in their minds. Then, they found it, a massive chamber at the center of the ship, glowing with a dark, ominous light. Inside, a massive alien artifact sat in the middle of the room, surrounded by strange, pulsating symbols. "This must be it," Dr. Hines whispered, her voice shaking with both awe and fear. "This is what the ship has been protecting all these years." Wright stepped forward, his hand on the weapon at his side, but his heart was heavy. They had come too far, and now they were face to face with the heart of the ship's power. But would they survive long enough to understand its true purpose? Would they be able to stop it before the ancient force consumed them all? The ship's response was immediate. The core of the ship pulsed again, and this time, the entire room seemed to react, the symbols glowing brighter and brighter. The air itself seemed to thrum with power, and the ground beneath their feet trembled. Whatever this artifact was, it was far more powerful than they could have ever imagined. The crew was standing at the edge of something far greater than themselves, and if they didn't act fast, they would be caught in the deadly grip of an ancient power that had waited eons to awaken. And now, that power was awake. The air in the chamber grew thick, almost electric. The symbols on the walls pulsed in time with the ship's core, a rhythm that felt unnatural, as if the very walls were alive. The artifact at the center of the room had come to life. It glowed with an eerie, dark light that seemed to suck the energy from the room itself. Captain Wright, heart pounding in his chest, knew that the ship was no longer just reacting. It was preparing for something. The ancient force inside the ship was awakening, and the crew was right at the center of it. "We need to stop it. Now." Wright's voice was sharp, but his command felt hollow against the overwhelming power that surrounded them. He glanced at Dr. Hines, who was staring at the artifact in awe and terror. She seemed to be drawn to it, her eyes wide, as if it were calling to her. "Do you see it?" Dr. Hines whispered, her voice trembling. This is not just a weapon. It's a signal. The ship, it's been waiting for something. It's been waiting for us to awaken it. But it's not us who it's calling. It's calling them." Wright's mind raced. Them. The aliens they had discovered earlier. The ones who had abandoned Earth long ago. Before he could ask, a low rumble vibrated through the floor. The ship's hum intensified, and the chamber began to shake violently. The artifact's glow intensified, turning from a faint purple to a blinding white. The walls of the chamber warped and twisted, as if the very structure of the ship was being bent by an unseen force. The light from the artifact reached out, wrapping around the crew like a glowing serpent, pulling them closer. "Stay back," Wright shouted, pulling out his weapon, but it was useless. The energy in the room was far too powerful, far beyond anything the crew could fight. Dr. Hines stepped forward, almost hypnotized by the light. "It's not us they want," she muttered, barely audible over the growing roar of the ship. "They're calling. They're masters." The words struck Wright like a cold punch to the gut. The ship, the artifact, everything, had been a trap, a beacon set long ago for something far worse. The alien race that had created the ship wasn't just interested in hiding from humanity. They were preparing for a return. A return that was now set in motion, and the humans had unwittingly triggered it. "Get out," Wright yelled, grabbing Dr. Hines by the arm and pulling her back. But it was too late. The chamber's doors slammed shut, trapping them inside with the artifact. The ship's hum grew deafening, the vibrations shaking their bones. The walls began to glow brighter, flashing erratically. A violent surge of energy shot from the artifact, causing the ship to lurch and tremble. The lights flickered, and the crew was thrown off balance, falling to the ground. As they struggled to stand, the ship's voice returned, this time louder, clearer, more ominous. "You are the ones who awakened us, but it is too late to stop what is to come. Wright's heart pounded in his chest as he realized the enormity of their situation. The ship wasn't just reacting to them. It was anticipating something far worse. And they were the catalyst. Dr. Hines gasped. No, this isn't just an alien ship. It's a weapon. A weapon designed to call for reinforcements. The masters of this ship, they're coming. And we've given them the signal. The thought hit Wright with the force of a sledgehammer. So what now? He asked, his voice barely audible. What do we do? Before Dr. Hines could answer, the walls of the chamber suddenly split apart. The floor dropped away, revealing an even deeper level beneath them, filled with more energy conduits and ancient alien technology. The ship seemed to be opening itself up, unveiling the depths of its power. Wright looked down into the abyss, his heart sinking. They were no longer just passengers on this ship. They were the trigger for something far larger than themselves, and there was no way out. The ship's voice rang out again, this time filled with a chilling finality. Your kind is not ready, but it is too late. The masters will come. You cannot stop them. Wright grabbed his weapon, trying to make sense of what was happening, but there was nothing they could do. They were at the mercy of something ancient and beyond their understanding. They had awakened the sleeping giant, and now they were about to pay the price. And then, the unthinkable happened. From the deep abyss below, the sound of engines rumbled. It wasn't just the ship. Something else was arriving. Something far larger, far more terrifying than anything the crew had imagined. As the ship's walls shimmered and twisted, opening up to reveal what lay below, the crew finally understood the true horror of their discovery. The artifact wasn't just calling for help, it was summoning the masters, and they were here. With every passing second, the crew felt the weight of their actions. There was no going back now. The galaxy had been set on a path it could never undo. The aliens they had once thought were lost to history were returning, and humanity, for better or worse, had just signed the death sentence for countless worlds. The ship shook violently one last time, the energy surge exploding outward, and then everything went dark. The masters were coming, and nothing could stop them now.